Hi friends, my name is Dheeraj and I am the lead programmer of vREST. In this video, I am going to demonstrate how you can use vREST to automate your REST API testing. I will use an example test application for demo named contacts application, which allows you to browse through a list of contacts and provides a basic CRUD functionality. Let us see how we can test this application using vREST. I am assuming that you have already registered an account and created an instance in vREST. Okay, let us start the testing. First step in any testing is to set up initial data for test cases. There can be various approaches to do this. First approach is to create an API endpoint in your test application to initialize your test data. And you can enable this endpoint only for test environment. Second approach is to write a separate application for this over APIs. We will follow the first approach for our demonstration. In vREST, any HTTP request is a separate test case. So let us create our first test case which will initialize our test data. Click on New button and provide your database initialization API URL, some summary, and select method post and click on Save button to create your first test case. A new test case will be shown in the list. Click on the test case to expand it. You can see various attributes of this test case. Response validator plays an important role in vREST. It is used to validate your test case responses. vREST provides two built-in response validators. One is default validator and second one is default schema validator. You can define your own custom validators by clicking on Create New Validator link or by going to Project Configuration tab. Default validator checks for exact match. If both expected and actual response are same, then the default validator passes the test case. For this validator to work, you need to define the expected body of the test case in Response tab. Default schema validator is different. Default schema validator checks for response schema or format instead of response content. For this validator to work, you need to define the expected schema of a test case response in the Response tab. Let us move on to the Request tab. In the Request Parameters subtab, you can define different types of request parameters like query, body, and path parameters. In Raw Body subtab, you can define your test case request body in raw format. The only difference is in Parameters subtab, you need to define your test case body parameters in tabular format, and in Raw Body subtab, you need to define your request body parameters in raw format. Raw body is also beneficial when you want to send some nested or multi-level parameters. Finally, Request Header subtab, as its name implies, is to define your test cases request headers. In Response tab, you can define either expected body or expected schema depending upon the validator you choose, as we discussed earlier. And also you can define expected headers in Expected Headers tab and extract values into variables from test case responses in Variable Extractor tab. We will discuss about variable extraction process later on in detail. Let us run this test case and see what happens. The test case has failed. Expand the test case to see the failure region. As we have not provided any expected body for our test case, and diff is indicating that your expected body should look like this. We can just copy this actual body to our expected body by simply clicking on button, copy actual to expected results. You can also write expected body manually by yourself, but using this will help you to prevent any human errors and you don't have to think about your expected body in advance. Let us rerun the test case. The test case has failed again. See the diff report. This time this test case failed due to some dynamic properties in the response. The underscore ID and created on properties are always changed whenever we initialize our database again. What should we do in this case? There can be several approaches to handle this case depending upon your context. One approach could be to check the response content schema instead of content value via default schema validator. Second approach could be to define your own custom validator and provide validation check by yourself for these two dynamic properties. Third approach could be to just ignore these dynamic properties with the help of a special variable. We will use this approach in our demo. Click on this info icon to see the actual test case and replace the dynamic properties with a special variable star. Click on Save button to save the expected body. More information about this special variable can be found in our user guide. Now, try to rerun the test case. Wow, the test case is now passing. Till now, I have demonstrated the manual way of creating a test case in vREST. Let us move on to the more powerful recording feature of vREST. We will now create other test cases for our context application via recording. To record test cases, you need to first configure the vREST Chrome extension. Just go to extension configuration page and select the instance name and project in which you want to store the recorded test cases. You can even set other properties also for your recorded test cases. We can apply filters to record test cases for specific patterns of API. Let us say in our context application we want to record all API endpoints which have a substring /contacts. Now save the configuration. To record test cases, simply go to your test application in the browser and turn on the recorder. Recorder will record test cases as per the defined filter criteria. Let us start recording our first test case. When I click on Browse Contacts link, then our interface fires Contacts List API. Our recorder simply records it and stores it as a test case in vREST. Create a new contact to validate the create API. We can record positive as well as negative test cases. Please note that if you have applied any client-side validations, then some of the negative test cases will not get recorded because your interface will not fire any request to the server. As we have not applied any client-side validations in our test application, let us try to create a contact without name. I have defined all the other details without defining the name. Now, after clicking on Save button, server-side validation will occur and an error is displayed here about a required field. We are now recording a test case when name length exceeds the desired limit. And finally, one valid case also. Let us refresh this page to record View API and delete this contact to record the delete API. That's it for recording. We recommend this way of writing test cases in vREST, even if you are writing a single test case, because this prevents any human error in specifying the test case, and definitely you can write your test cases much faster. Now go to vREST instance and click on Reload button to see the recorded test cases. There are some unwanted test cases also being recorded due to our recording filter criteria. We need to remove them and we need to add summary to our recorded test cases to make our test cases more readable. Let us try to execute the recorded test cases now. 4 of our test cases have failed. Expand the test cases to see the failure region. List contact API has failed due to some dynamic properties. Add contact API test case has also failed with the same region. View contact API test case has failed because the system doesn't find the contact ID specified, because it was the ID when the test case was recorded, and we need to replace it with the ID that is created by our previous test case. And for that, we need to extract the ID into a variable, and that variable can be used in these test cases. Let us fix our first test case. Simply click on the info icon to see the test case and replace the dynamic properties with special variable star. And save the expected body. Similarly, we can fix the add contact API. For the last two failed test cases, we need to first extract the variable from our add contact API and use it in subsequent test cases. To define variable, go to response tab, and in variable extractor tab, simply define a variable, say contact ID, and path will be $._ID. Note that variable name must be defined without curly braces, and when you use this variable name should be wrapped with a pair of curly braces. Now we need to replace this variable in the last two test cases. We can use search and replace feature of vREST for that. First, select the contact ID value which we want to replace and just copy it, and select the test cases in which we want to replace the value. Now click on More and select Search and Replace on Selected. Paste the copied ID in the search field and replace it with our variable contact ID. And click on Select All to select all attributes in the selected test cases. And finally, click on Search and Replace button to finish the task. Note that variable contact ID is replaced in place of actual contact IDs. Now try to run the test cases again. Oh, one test case is still failing. This test case has failed due to dynamic property. Apply the same procedure as we did earlier in our previous test cases. And run the test cases again. Congratulations, all the test cases are now passing. In this way, you can automate your REST API testing. In whole process, we haven't touched any programming language. Most of the testing in vREST can be done without doing any programming. For advanced cases, you may need to define your own custom validators or utility methods. And for this, you may need to have a basic JavaScript knowledge. That's it. Thank you for watching this video. Have a nice day.